Hey, welcome back to Faux Hammer Videos. So this is a new kind of mini series on the channel where I'm doing some hobby myth testing. I don't think I can say busting without getting sued by Adam Savage and his mate Jamie. They're not mates, are they? Anyway, let's get to it. So this week we're going to be having a look at the myth is a glossy base coat better for metallic paints? So to test that, I've got myself some matte primer, some glossy primer, and some enamel based gloss primer, which is backwards. There we go, the Alclad stuff. So let's have a look at all three of these right after this intro. So welcome to the channel. If you're new, please like, please subscribe, please hit the notification bell. If you are already a subscriber, unsubscribe and resubscribe. Create another account and subscribe, just so we get more viewers. Hey, I don't know, I just want to get that algorithm going up and up and up. So anyway, I like to ask a question of the week. The question this week is, when it comes to metallics, what is your preferred brand of metallic paints? Have you tested a few? Have you only used Citadel because you paint Games Workshop miniatures and you've not heard of or considered others? Anyway, what is your favorite brand of metallic paints and why? Please write it down in the comments below down here, and at some point I'm going to sort out the lighting in this room so that when I move the hands and stuff like that, I haven't got crazy shadows going all over my face causing some kind of strobe effect and potentially causing people epilepsy. I maybe need to put a warning on this channel. Anyway, let's get into it and start testing out these primers. So what I've done here is I've marked all the models up. I've marked 5 of each as either a 3 lines, 2 lines or 1 line. The 3 lines are going to be the Enamel Alclad Gloss Black. The 2 lines are going to be the Vallejo Acrylic Gloss Black. And then the 1 line is going to be the Vallejo Matte Black. And then we can test a few different strategies on how we're painting the models and different colours and see what the results are. So first things first, I just sprayed 5 of the models with each of the primers. So the Vallejo stuff's really easy. You just pour it into your airbrush and then spray it and then clean out your airbrush, you're done. The good thing about those is they're acrylic based, so most of the time you can clean the majority out with just water, and if any of it starts to dry, just a little bit of airbrush thinner will do it. The Alclad stuff, however, though, because it's enamel based, is an absolute nightmare to clean out. So what I made sure to do was, first of all, use a really cheap airbrush, because if I don't clean it out thoroughly, then it will end up clogging up the actual mechanism of the airbrush, and before I know it, £200 worth of airbrush is absolutely ruined. I've done it before, I don't want to do it again. So I just use one of my cheap old sort of like £15 off Amazon airbrushes whenever I'm using an enamel paint. I only tend to use them when I'm doing a full coat anyway, so I don't need to worry too much about things like speckling, because the whole model's going to get covered in the same paint. Spraying wise, I decided to test 4 colours. So the first one up is Citadel's Lead Belcher. This is from their Air range. A couple of reasons for this. One, Lead Belcher is one of the most common silvers that Games Workshop do, and for the most part, base coats are done in Lead Belcher or a similar colour. But the air paints do go straight into the airbrush without any need for thinning or anything like that, so there was no need to start messing around with consistency. This just goes into the airbrush and sprays. The second one, I wanted to try some gold, see how they work, and my favourite gold of all time, although it's the hardest to work with, we'll get onto that in a second, is Citadel's Retributor Armor. Now, unfortunately, they don't, at least yet, make an air paint of this, and they really need to. Retributor Armor is one of my favourite golds out there. It's so warm, it's so rich, it's so versatile, and it really is the colour that makes things like Stormcast models pop. Unfortunately, I did have to mix this with a bit of thinner, which makes it very difficult. I've had mixed results thinning this over the years. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Unfortunately here, when spraying these, it just went on a little bit heavy. This is more my fault than the mix or the consistency. I was just being a bit lazy and a bit quick to try and get them on the surface, but these spray on. Then we went on to another colour, so Vallejo. This is an acrylic based colour, and it's actually made with aluminium flakes as part of the pigment, and this is the Vallejo Metal Colour Chrome, and obviously with it being chrome, you expect it to be highly reflective anyway, and as you can see, as we start going through and spraying this on, you can already see the results speak for themselves. So we'll have a closer look in a minute when we step into the void. but that's that. And then finally, the enamel-based product and enamel-based colours. Yep, once again, we go into the cheaper airbrush before start spraying this because they're such a nightmare to clean out. They absolutely stink whenever using metallics through an airbrush. Whenever using enamels through an airbrush, make sure you've got good ventilation, you're wearing a mask, you've got safety equipment, because not only does it stink, this stuff is probably going to be slowly killing you. But yeah, once again, like this stuff, you can see immediately the impact of the different primers. So question almost answered, but let's step into the void with the models and see what we think. So first up, again, we've got the lead Belcher. Now, unfortunately, with the lead Belcher, it really didn't make a difference what base coat we put on there initially. Now, I was expecting a bit more of a different result here. Now, I know that this is a base paint for one, so the consistency of the paint is going to be made with, you know, coverage and density in mind. And with a lot of metallics, they tend to leave them very, very thin so that they're almost opaque in the way you apply them. So with lead Belcher, probably due to the nature of its own properties, absolutely no impact what base colour you put on there at all. Would perhaps be interested in trying this again with something like Stormhost Silver, which is a lot brighter, but as for this, really didn't make a difference. So the next one up is Retributor Armor. Now, this is where you can clearly see, first of all, that I was very heavy-handed in the spray of this. Obviously, I've kept spraying before the models dry, which is why you've ended up with the tide marks around the edges. It's hard even to tell here which one of these was the matte, which one was the acrylic gloss, and which one was the enamel gloss, purely because the paint, once again, being a base coat, most likely the properties of the paint itself and the density of the pigment in it has just completely covered anything we put on in that primer layer. So once again, myth busted, primer layer doesn't matter. When we step up to the Vallejo metal color range, now this already is one of my favorite ranges just purely for coverage. It doesn't matter, so long as you've got a decent dark base coat to put it down on, this stuff really does cover. Whether you're brush painting or airbrushing, it covers like nothing else, which is great for a metallic, and it's super thin. But you can see here, it's quite obviously had a difference or a change in its properties based on the base color we actually put on it. So we've initially got the matte color, which has resulted in a more matte finish. Then we've got the semi-gloss or the acrylic matte acrylic gloss, which has made it a little bit shiny, but then it really pops out on the final one, on the enamel gloss color, which makes a significant difference to the paint that we've put on there. And then finally, the one that stands out as the absolute glossiest colour is the Enamel Chrome from Alclad. Now, there are various different chromes out there. There's mirror finishes, Green Stuff World does one, and then I think there's one by a company called Culture Hustle that do like mirror in a bottle. But here at Alclad, as a specific model paint, this chrome really does stand out as a chrome model, and I'll have another video on that as well. So this one shows quite obviously that the surface primer, the base coat, has had a substantial difference on the result of the model itself. So what I wanted to do here then was repeat the test again, and this time using a brush, because I know not everyone out there either has an airbrush, can afford an airbrush, or is even interested in airbrushing. So when it comes to brushing paints on, yes, now to be fair, I have airbrushed the primer on still, but what I wanted to do was just quickly take the easiest one to apply that had a difference in the previous test. So we've taken the Vallejo metal colour and we've brushed it on here. First off, again, we've done it over the Vallejo matte, then we've done it over the Belcher gloss, and then we've done it over the Alclad gloss. And just once again, stepping into what I call the void, we can have a look at these models. And you can see, yes, there's a difference between models 1, which is the matte, 2, which is the Vallejo gloss, and 3, which is the Alclad gloss. You can see that there's a difference on there. Had I spent more time bothering with this and going through the effort of actually painting the different models and doing some consistent base coats all the way through to, you know, full coverage, then I think I may have got probably the same result in the end. The more paint you add on here, the more it returns to the natural properties of the paint that you're actually applying. So if I put too many coats on, or if I put a too thick a coat on, then you would lose the properties of the base layer that's underneath. So let's have a look at the results and kind of discuss what we think about whether or not the primer color matters when it comes to painting metallics. So yeah, I suppose when it comes to testing out this myth, it's a case of it depends. The paints you use, I mean, obviously, depending on the properties of the paint itself, will have more of an impact naturally than the paints you put in on top of them. The other thing you need to consider is how thick you're putting that paint on. So where we've used an airbrush here, we can apply super thin coats and have really solid coverage. And that's the benefit of an airbrush and why I keep pushing them on hobbyists. It lets you get those base layers down and do a lot of things that are next to impossible, or at least they're beyond the amount of effort required when it comes to brushing them on. So yeah, when it comes to doing it, the answer is yes. The base coat will have an impact on the actual surface of the model, but only in specific circumstances. You need to be using a paint with a really, really fine pigment, a paint with a lot of natural opacity. You need to be applying it as thin as possible, and that's again where the airbrush can come in and really come in handy. So if you want the chromiest, shiniest, craziest, brightest looking models that will dazzle your opponent, then yeah, you definitely want to go with a gloss black base. The glossier the better, and that glossiness will clearly have an impact on the final result. But then additionally, you want a really bright, really naturally shiny, reflective, glossy, shiny, chromy, silvery finish for your paint that's going over it. Something like a deep dark silver or deep dark gold base coat is probably just going to negate the properties of your base layer anyway. So there you go. I hope you've learned something from this video. I hope it gives you some tips. I hope you go out and practice some things with different paints for yourself. Let me know the results. Share links to the results down in the comments below. Really interested in what the community is doing, so by all means comment. As for now, that's me, Fohammer, done, gone. Like, comment, subscribe. Fohammer out. So, next bit up. Oh,
stop. Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to have a little chat about Warhammer 40,000 Imperium, because it's a thing you can sign up for now. It's the newest series from Hatchet Partworks, the same lot who did Conquest and Mortal Realms. I didn't do Conquest myself, personally, because I looked at all the stuff I have and went, you know what? I don't think I need to add to the pile of not